Imagine a country where happiness is written into the constitution, where hospitals and schools charge nothing, where the entire nation is carbon negative by law, where there are no traffic lights in the capital city. That country exists. It's called Bhutan, and it's tucked into the folds of the Himalayas between India and China. For decades, it has prioritized the well-being of its people above economic growth, measuring success not in GDP, but in gross national happiness. And yet, despite all of this, Bhutan is losing its people. Young Bhutanese are leaving in numbers that threaten the nation's future. They're heading to Australia, Canada, the United States, anywhere that offers higher wages and more opportunity. The country that built an entire philosophy around contentment is watching its youth walk away. Officials call it an existential crisis. So Bhutan's king, beloved and respected, has decided to try something radical. He's building a city, not a city of glass towers and luxury apartments, not another Dubai or Singapore clone. This is a city designed around mindfulness, sustainability, and the preservation of culture. A city where the tallest buildings are 6 stories high, where airports sit on bridges, where dams double as temples, where flooding is managed not with concrete channels, but with rice paddies. This is the story of Gelephu Mindfulness City, a megaproject unlike any other, and the gamble of a nation trying to save itself without losing its soul. Bhutan is roughly the size of Switzerland, landlocked in the eastern Himalayas. Its population is just over 750,000 people. To the south lies India, to the north, China. For most of its history, Bhutan remained almost completely isolated from the outside world. There were no roads connecting it to neighbouring countries until the 1960s. Television and the internet didn't arrive until 1999. Tourism was forbidden until 1974, and even then, only a trickle of visitors were allowed in under strict government control. This wasn't backwardness, it was deliberate. Bhutan's leaders watched what happened to other small nations when they opened their doors too quickly. They saw cultures eroded, environments destroyed, economies distorted by foreign investment. They decided Bhutan would develop on its own terms, slowly, carefully, in a way that preserved what made it unique. In the 1970s, Bhutan's 4th king, Jigme Singye Wangchuck, coined a phrase that would define the nation's identity: gross national happiness. It was a direct challenge to the West's obsession with gross domestic product. The king argued that a nation's success should be measured not by how much wealth it generates, but by how content and fulfilled its people are. In 2008, this philosophy was enshrined in Bhutan's constitution. Gross national happiness rests on 4 pillars. The first is good governance, transparent and accountable leadership that serves the people. The second is sustainable and equitable economic development, ensuring that growth doesn't destroy the environment or widen inequality. The third is the preservation of culture, protecting Bhutan's language, traditions and Buddhist heritage. The fourth is environmental conservation. By law, 60% of Bhutan's land must remain forested. Hunting is illegal. Fishing is illegal. There are no slaughterhouses. Plastic bags are banned. The results are striking. Bhutan is one of only 3 carbon-negative countries in the world. Its forests absorb more carbon dioxide than the entire nation emits. Healthcare and education are free. The literacy rate has climbed to over 70%. Life expectancy has increased dramatically. By conventional measures of well-being, Bhutan is doing remarkably well for a small landlocked nation with limited natural resources. But there's a problem. Bhutan's economy is still largely agrarian. The majority of people work in farming, much of it subsistence level. There are few large industries. Wages are low. Opportunities for young people, especially those with university degrees, are limited. And in an increasingly connected world, where every smartphone brings news of higher salaries and shinier cities, that's become a crisis. Since 2017, Bhutan has been experiencing what officials describe as a brain drain. Thousands of young Bhutanese, many of them educated at government expense, are leaving the country. They're going to Australia, where Bhutanese can work on skilled migration visas. They're going to North America. They're going to the Gulf states. Exact numbers are hard to verify, but estimates suggest that by 2023, as much as 9% of Bhutan's population had emigrated or was in the process of doing so. For a country of 750,000, that's catastrophic. The government has tried incentives, they've raised public sector salaries, they've offered land grants, they've promoted entrepreneurship programs, but the fundamental problem remains. Bhutan simply doesn't have enough high-paying jobs to keep its educated youth at home, and culturally the Bhutanese are not a people who complain loudly or protest. They leave quietly, often with a sense of guilt, knowing that they're abandoning the country that educated them. This is the paradox. Bhutan built a nation around happiness, and yet its people are choosing to leave. The question the government faced was simple. How do you create economic opportunity without destroying the very things that make Bhutan special? How do you compete with the wages and opportunities of the developed world while maintaining your forests, your culture, your Buddhist values? The answer, according to Bhutan's fifth king, Jigme Khesar Namgyel Wangchuk, is Gelephu Mindfulness City. King Jigme Khesar Namgyel Wangchuk ascended to the throne in 2006 at the age of 26. He is the world's youngest reigning monarch and is deeply beloved in Bhutan. Educated at Oxford and trained in international relations, he represents a generation that understands both the value of Bhutan's traditions and the pressures of the modern world. He has spent much of his reign walking a tightrope between preserving Bhutan's identity and preparing it for the 21st century. In December 2023, he unveiled Gelephu Mindfulness City. The announcement was made during a national address. The king explained that Bhutan was facing an existential crisis. The emigration of young people was threatening the nation's future. The economy needed to grow, but not in a way that compromised Bhutan's values. What was needed was a bold experiment, a place where new ideas could be tested, where Bhutan could learn to integrate with the global economy without losing itself. Gelephu Mindfulness City, he said, would be that place. The city will be located in southern Bhutan, near the town of Gelephu in Sarpang district. The site covers approximately 1,000 square kilometers, roughly the size of Hong Kong or Singapore. It lies in a subtropical zone, much warmer and more humid than the rest of Bhutan, which is dominated by mountains and high valleys. The land is mostly agricultural, with rice paddies, forests and several rivers flowing through it. Gelephu already exists as a small town with a population of around 9,000 people. The new city will be built around it. What makes this project extraordinary is not its size, but its philosophy. Gelephu Mindfulness City is being designed as a special administrative region, a state within a state. It will have its own governance structure, its own tax policies, and its own regulatory framework. The goal is to create a place where businesses can operate with fewer bureaucratic hurdles, where international investment is welcome, and where innovation can flourish. In other words, it's Bhutan's version of a special economic zone. But unlike most special economic zones, which tend to prioritize profit above all else, Gelephu is being designed around Bhutan's core values. The city's master plan was developed by Bjarke Ingels Group, a Danish architectural firm known for innovative, human-centered design. BIG's proposal for Gelephu is unlike anything they've built before. There are no skyscrapers. The tallest buildings in the city will be 6 stories high. This is partly to reduce the use of carbon-intensive materials like steel and concrete, and partly to maintain a human scale. The king wants Gelephu to feel like a place where people live, not a place where corporations show off. The city will be organized around Bhutan's traditional concept of the mandala, a geometric representation of the universe used in Buddhist meditation. The layout is based on overlapping circles and squares, with public spaces, temples and gardens at the center. This is not just aesthetic. The mandala structure is meant to encourage mindfulness, to create spaces where people naturally slow down and reflect. Transportation will be minimized. The city is designed to be walkable and bikeable, with most residents able to reach work, school and shops within a 15-minute walk. There will be public transit, but cars will be discouraged. The goal is to reduce emissions and create a quieter, less stressful urban environment. And then there are the bridges. Gelephu sits in a region carved by rivers. The Manas, the Nyera Amachu and several smaller tributaries flow through the area, fed by monsoon rains and Himalayan snowmelt. In most cities, rivers are obstacles. They require crossings, which require bridges, which are expensive and purely functional. In Gelephu, bridges are the centerpiece of the design. Bjarke Ingels' group proposed that instead of building simple crossings, the bridges themselves should be inhabited. This idea is rooted in Bhutanese tradition. Throughout Bhutan's history, important structures have been built at river crossings. These are called dzongs, fortified monasteries that serve as administrative centers, temples and defensive strongholds. Dzongs are typically massive stone and wood structures built on hilltops or at the confluence of rivers, places where geography naturally focuses human activity. Gelephu's bridges are a modern interpretation of the dzong. Each bridge is not just a crossing but a destination, a place where essential services are housed. The bridges will contain schools, hospitals, temples, markets and government offices. By locating these institutions on the bridges, the city reduces the need for separate buildings and makes efficient use of space. It also creates landmarks, places that people will naturally gravitate toward. One bridge will house an international airport. Yes, an airport on a bridge. The idea sounds absurd until you understand the logic. Airports require enormous amounts of flat land. In a mountainous country like Bhutan, flat land is scarce and often the most fertile, used for farming. Building an airport means destroying farmland or forest. The solution is to build the airport over the river, allowing the land beneath to remain productive. The river will continue to flow. The fish will swim beneath the runways. Rice paddies will stretch to the water's edge. The terminal is designed with a diamond-shaped lattice structure inspired by traditional Bhutanese architecture. The primary structural material is glulam, glued laminated timber, which is both sustainable and strong. Glulam beams are made by bonding layers of wood together, creating beams that can span large distances without the need for steel or concrete. The beams will be brightly coloured, a reference to kachiens, the ornately painted wooden columns found in Bhutanese temples and homes. The airport is also modular. As demand grows, sections of the terminal can be disassembled and expanded. This is critical in a city that is trying to grow sustainably. Traditional airports are built to meet projected demand decades in the future, which often means building far more capacity than is needed in the early years. Gelephu's airport can grow incrementally, reducing waste and unnecessary expense. Another bridge will house a hydroelectric dam. Bhutan already generates 99% of its electricity from hydropower. The country has enormous potential for further development, with dozens of rivers fed by glacial melt. Gelephu's dam will not only provide power for the city but also serve as a public space. The dam's facade is designed with stepped terraces, inspired by ancient stepwells found in India. These are not just decorative. Visitors will be able to walk along the terraces, experiencing the power of the river up close. At the centre of the dam, perched directly above the water, is a temple. This is a place for meditation, for reflection, for connection with nature. Other bridges will house medical centres, schools and markets. Each is designed to be a gathering place, a point of connection within the city's fabric. By elevating these essential services onto bridges, the city creates vertical neighbourhoods, places where people from different parts of Gelephu will naturally meet. This is a radical departure from typical urban planning, which tends to separate functions. In most cities, you live in one place, work in another, shop somewhere else. You spend hours every day in transit. Gelephu's bridges are an attempt to collapse those separations, to create a city where life is less fragmented. Every year during monsoon season, Gelephu's rivers swell. Rainfall in the Himalayas is intense. Rivers that are placid in winter become torrents in summer. Flooding is a regular occurrence. For centuries, the people who lived in this region have adapted to the floods, building houses on stilts, planting crops that can tolerate waterlogging, and simply accepting that for a few months each year, the land belongs to the river. Modern cities typically respond to flooding with brute force. They channelize rivers, building concrete walls to contain the water. They construct vast stormwater drainage systems to funnel rainfall away as quickly as possible. They harden every surface, paving over soil so that water has nowhere to go except into pipes. This approach works to a point, but it requires enormous amounts of resources and creates a rigid urban environment. And it often fails. As climate change brings more extreme rainfall, cities around the world are discovering that their drainage systems can't keep up. Gelephu is trying a different approach. Instead of fighting the floods, the city is designed to absorb them. Around each river, wide buffer zones have been designated. These areas will not be developed. Instead, they will be planted with rice paddies. Paddy fields are perfectly suited to flood management. Rice grows in standing water. When the rivers overflow, the paddies absorb the excess, holding it temporarily and allowing it to soak into the ground. As the water recedes, the rice continues to grow. The paddies serve a dual purpose. They provide food for the city and they protect it from flooding. This concept is known as nature-based solutions or sponge city design. It has been implemented in cities across China, where rapid urbanization and intense rainfall have caused catastrophic flooding. The idea is simple. Instead of trying to move water away as quickly as possible, you slow it down. You let it soak into the ground. You create permeable surfaces, green spaces, wetlands, anything that can absorb water and release it gradually. In Gelephu, this extends beyond the rice paddies. Streets will be paved with permeable materials that allow rainwater to seep through into the soil below. Rooftops will be covered with gardens. Public squares will be designed with shallow basins that can hold water temporarily during heavy rains, doubling as reflecting pools or play areas when dry. Parks and green corridors will wind through the city, creating natural channels for water to flow. The effect is twofold. First, it dramatically reduces the need for expensive stormwater infrastructure. Gelephu won't need massive underground tunnels or pumping stations. The landscape itself will manage the water. Second, it creates a city that feels alive. Green spaces, wetlands and rivers are woven into the urban fabric. Wildlife can move through the city. Birds, insects, fish, even larger animals like deer or elephants will have corridors to follow. This is critical in Bhutan, where environmental conservation is not just a policy but a cultural value. Dr. Lote Tshering, the governor of Gelephu Mindfulness City, explained the philosophy in an interview. He said that in Bhutan, nature is not something separate from human life. It is not a resource to be exploited or a problem to be managed. Nature is part of the community. Rivers, forests, animals, they are all neighbours. Building a city in harmony with nature is not an option. It's a moral obligation. This approach also has a practical advantage. It's cheaper. Concrete and steel are expensive, especially for a small nation like Bhutan that must import most of its building materials. Soil, plants, and wood are abundant locally. By relying on nature-based solutions, Gelephu reduces both its construction costs and its carbon footprint. One of the most striking features of Gelephu's design is the absence of tall buildings. In a world where cities compete to build ever higher, where skylines have become symbols of economic power, Gelephu is deliberately staying low. The tallest buildings in the city will be 6 stories. This is not arbitrary. It reflects both environmental and cultural priorities. Structurally, buildings of 6 stories or fewer can be constructed primarily with wood and masonry. They don't require steel frames or reinforced concrete cores, materials that are carbon intensive to produce. Cement production alone accounts for approximately 8% of global carbon dioxide emissions. Steel production adds another 7 to 9%. For a country that prides itself on being carbon negative, minimizing the use of these materials is essential. 6 stories is also a human scale. Studies in urban planning have consistently shown that low-rise, high-density neighbourhoods tend to be more socially cohesive than high-rise districts. When buildings are shorter, people are more likely to know their neighbours, to interact on the street, to feel a sense of connection to their community. High-rise living, by contrast, can be isolating. Residents enter through a lobby, take an elevator to their floor, and never see the people living 10 floors above or below them. Gelephu is designed to encourage human connection. The city's layout places most residences within walking distance of schools, markets and workplaces. Courtyards and shared gardens are integrated into residential blocks. Streets are narrow and shaded, designed for walking rather than driving. The goal is to create a city where people encounter each other naturally, where daily life fosters community rather than anonymity. This is also deeply rooted in Bhutanese culture. Traditional Bhutanese villages are compact, with homes clustered around a central monastery or temple. People know each other. They participate in communal rituals and festivals. Social bonds are strong. As Bhutan urbanizes, there's a fear that these bonds will weaken, that people will become isolated and individualistic. Gelephu's design is an attempt to preserve that sense of community, even as the country modernizes. The absence of skyscrapers also has a symbolic dimension. Skyscrapers are the architecture of capitalism, monuments to corporate power and individual wealth. They dominate skylines, asserting the importance of whoever built them. Bhutan does not want its cities to be defined by such symbols. The king has made it clear that Gelephu is not about creating billionaires or attracting multinational corporations to build glass towers. It's about creating a place where ordinary Bhutanese can live comfortably, work productively, and maintain their cultural identity. This doesn't mean the city will be technologically backward. Far from it. Gelephu is being designed as a smart city, with advanced digital infrastructure. High-speed internet will be universal. Government services will be accessible online. The city will use sensors and data analytics to manage energy use, traffic flow and waste collection. But the technology will be invisible, embedded into the city's systems rather than celebrated as an end in itself. The emphasis is on livability, not spectacle. Gelephu Mindfulness City is an ambitious project. The timeline calls for the completion of major infrastructure within 10 years. That includes the airport, the bridges, the dam and the basic utilities. Water, power, sewage and telecommunications. Residential and commercial development will follow, with the goal of housing up to 100,000 people within 2 decades. The estimated cost is difficult to pin down. Early reports suggested around $100 billion US dollars over the project's lifespan, though Bhutanese officials have not confirmed this figure. For context, Bhutan's entire GDP in 2023 was approximately $3 billion. The project is clearly beyond the country's ability to fund on its own. It will require foreign investment. This is where things get complicated. Bhutan has always been cautious about foreign investment. The country has seen what happens when outside money floods in too quickly. Cultures get commodified. Local businesses get displaced by international chains. Wealth inequality skyrockets. Bhutan wants investment, but on its own terms. Gelephu's special administrative status is designed to make this possible. The city will have its own regulatory framework separate from the rest of Bhutan, allowing for more flexible business laws and tax policies. The goal is to attract companies that align with Bhutan's values: sustainability, social responsibility, respect for culture. But will investors bite? Special economic zones have a mixed track record. Some, like Shenzhen in China or Dubai in the UAE, have become global success stories. Others, like Forest City in Malaysia, have become expensive failures. The difference often comes down to location. Shenzhen succeeded because it was next to Hong Kong, a global financial hub. Dubai succeeded because it positioned itself as a gateway between Europe, Asia and Africa. Gelephu, by contrast, is landlocked, hours from any major city, in a country most people couldn't locate on a map. Dr. Lote Tshering, the governor of Gelephu, acknowledged this challenge in an interview. He said that Bhutan is not trying to compete with Singapore or Hong Kong. The city is not being built for multinational corporations or ultra-wealthy residents. It's being built for Bhutanese. The hope is that by creating a place where young people can find good jobs, where families can live comfortably, where culture is respected, Bhutan can stop the exodus. If foreign companies want to set up here and employ Bhutanese workers, they're welcome. But the city's success will not be measured in how many Fortune 500 companies it attracts. It will be measured in how many Bhutanese choose to stay. The construction process itself poses enormous challenges. Bhutan has a small population. Its construction industry is limited. Building an international airport, a hydroelectric dam, and dozens of bridges simultaneously will require skills and expertise that simply don't exist in large numbers within the country. Bhutanese officials have been frank about this. They are actively seeking partnerships with international firms. Engineers, architects and construction companies from India, China, Europe and North America have been invited to bid on contracts, but there's a catch. Any company that works on Gelephu is expected to train Bhutanese workers. The goal is not just to build a city, but to build a generation of Bhutanese engineers, architects and construction managers who can take what they learn in Gelephu and apply it elsewhere in the country. In 40 or 50 years, the hope is that when a similar project is being planned somewhere else in the world, it will be Bhutanese experts who are consulted. This is a long-term vision. It requires patience, investment, and a willingness to accept that progress will be slower than in countries where labour is cheap and regulations are lax. But it's also a vision that aligns with Bhutan's philosophy. Growth is fine, but only if it's sustainable and equitable. Jobs are important, but only if they provide dignity and opportunity for learning. As of early 2025, construction on Gelephu Mindfulness City has begun. Land surveys are complete. Foundation work for the airport bridge is underway. The Bhutanese government has held multiple rounds of consultations with local communities, explaining the project and addressing concerns. So far, public support appears strong. Many Bhutanese see Gelephu as a lifeline, a chance to build a future without leaving the country. But there are doubts. Some critics argue that the project is too ambitious, that Bhutan is biting off more than it can chew. They point to the country's lack of experience with large-scale urban development, its limited financial resources, and its dependence on foreign expertise. They worry that Gelephu will become another vanity project, a half-finished monument to a king's dream. Others worry about cultural erosion. Even with all the safeguards in place, even with the emphasis on traditional architecture and Buddhist values, will Gelephu really feel like Bhutan? Or will it become a generic international city, a place where English is the dominant language, where traditional dress is rare, where monks are a curiosity rather than a central part of daily life? These are not idle concerns. Urbanization has a way of flattening cultures. The very forces that make cities economically dynamic, the mobility, the diversity, the focus on productivity, can undermine the traditions and social structures that hold communities together. The king seems aware of these risks. In his public statements about Gelephu, he has repeatedly emphasized that the city is an experiment. It's a place to test ideas, to learn what works and what doesn't. If it succeeds, its lessons can be applied to the rest of Bhutan. If it fails, the rest of the country remains intact. This framing is both pragmatic and reassuring. It acknowledges uncertainty without surrendering ambition. There is also a broader question about whether a city can be designed to make people happy. Gross national happiness is a beautiful idea, but it's also nebulous. Happiness is subjective, influenced by factors that no urban planner can control. Gelephu can provide jobs, housing, clean air and green spaces, but it can't guarantee that people will feel fulfilled or content. Some Bhutanese may still choose to leave, drawn by opportunities abroad that no domestic city can match. That's the reality of globalization. The question is whether Gelephu can reduce the exodus to a manageable level, whether it can give enough people enough reasons to stay. Early signs are cautiously optimistic. Applications for work permits and business licenses in Gelephu have been strong. International interest, while measured, has been genuine. Companies in sectors like renewable energy, education and healthcare have expressed interest in setting up operations in the city. The Bhutanese diaspora, many of whom left reluctantly, have been watching the project closely. Some have said they would consider returning if Gelephu can offer the opportunities they found abroad. And then there's the symbolic dimension. Gelephu Mindfulness City is more than a real estate development. It's a statement. In a world increasingly dominated by consumerism, inequality, and environmental destruction, Bhutan is proposing an alternative. A city that values people over profit. A city that respects nature rather than dominating it. A city that sees technology as a tool, not a goal. A city that measures success not in skyscrapers or billionaires, but in the well-being of its residents. Whether Gelephu succeeds or fails, it represents a challenge to the rest of the world. It asks whether development has to come at the cost of happiness, whether cities have to be noisy, polluted and alienating, whether growth has to mean inequality and environmental destruction. Bhutan is betting that the answer is no. The stakes are enormous. If Gelephu works, it could become a model for sustainable urban development, a proof that another path is possible. If it fails, it will be another cautionary tale about the limits of idealism in a world shaped by economic realities. For now, construction continues. Rivers flow beneath the rising bridges, forests remain standing, and in a small Himalayan kingdom, a nation built on happiness is fighting to keep its people from leaving. The future of a nation, and perhaps the future of urban planning, is being written in southern Bhutan, and the world is watching.